Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in Guyana over the past week or so. And as I normally would say, Guyana is a very dynamic place, and in any given week, we always have a number of important issues worthy of discussion. This week is no different. I want to begin by greeting all of our viewers who are joining us on television from Mahaica to West Coast Berbice in Region 5, right here in Guyana. Good evening. And good evening to all of our viewers who are joining us on the east bank of the Berbice River, and of course, New Amsterdam, and most definitely along the Quarantine Coast. All of you, tens of thousands of you who are joining us on television, good evening and welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To our friends and followers who are joining us from Freedom Radio, Georgetown, good evening and welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And last but not least, to our friends and followers who are joining us on Facebook Live right across the length and breadth of Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, the United States, of course, Canada, Europe, and as far as Australia. Good evening and welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And let us begin by sharing this program with your friends and those who are following you on Facebook so that we can have the widest possible audience. Please press that share button on your phone or on your computer so that this program can be seen not only by you, but by your friends, your relatives, and all those who you have on your Facebook account. Ivan Chu is watching us from Ottawa, Canada. Altav Latif, Nalini Naidu, Shakira Alexi, Hansraj Prasad from Bronx. I saw earlier Navi Chan from Toronto. Parmanan Kanhai is watching us. Gayatri P. Singh, Bibi Ali, Kevin Samaru, Latif Gonzalez, Francis Kunji, Ricky North, and so many of you, Riklan Prasad, good evening to all of you. And as I said, I want to see your comments. I want to interact with you so that we can make the program as interactive and interesting as possible. Neetu Maraj, Fazlur Ali from Montreal, Canada, Mahendra Bechu from Williamsburg, Bibi Ali from Ruby. So a lot of people are in the house. Jack Deo, Meena Tulsi, a lot of love, a lot of thumbs up. Mala Prasad, Neetu Maharaj Singh, and so many of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Richard Stanislaus from Bronx, Ahmad Ali from Toronto. So a lot of people are in the house tonight. And thank you all for joining me. And please, let me see your views, let me hear your views as we continue with the program. And what is in the news? I think right now the most current issue in the news is the legal proceedings filed by Vice President Bharat Jagdeo against this Sue person. As you know, Mr. Jagdeo had indicated that he will file legal proceedings against Mr. Sue for certain defamatory remarks made by Mr. Sue to a Vice News reporter. Mr. Jagdeo is on record denying absolutely the allegations of impropriety made against him by Mr. Sue. He accepted, of course, that he knows Mr. Sue and that he has assisted Mr. Sue in the past, and he did not deny his involvement and relationship with Mr. Sue. But when the second video came out, we heard Mr. Sue making some inappropriate and derogatory and defamatory allegations against Mr. Jagdev, alleging that Mr. Jagdev was involved in some nefarious practices. Mr. Jagdev denied those allegations and indicated that he will file legal proceedings. And on last Friday, through a group of lawyers in private practice, he launched those proceedings. So we will have to wait and see how those proceedings unfold. Last Thursday, we had a very eventful sitting of the National Assembly where a lot of important matters were discussed, but perhaps the highlight of that sitting was the adoption of a report coming from the Privileges Committee that recommended the suspension of 8 parliamentarians on the opposite side. The Privileges Committee sat for several months and deliberated on a motion moved by Minister Gail Teixeira that these 8 persons be sanctioned for unparliamentary conduct, for contemptuous conduct, and for attempting to interfere with the lawful and orderly conduct of the National Assembly. The complaint relates to the behavior of the opposition on the 29th of December 2021. You would recall that that was the night that we debated and passed the Natural Resources Fund bill. That bill has since been assented to by the President, and it now has the force of law. But during the debates of that bill, the opposition refused many directions from the Speaker to take their seats. They stood in their seats and they chanted and they shouted and they blew whistles. And when that did not achieve their objective of preventing the bill from being debated, they then left their seats and descended into the rotunda of the National Assembly. The rotunda is that sacred space which separates the government side from the opposition side. And in any parliament, that space is sacrosanct and ought not to be entered into by any parliamentarian except with permission from the Speaker of the National Assembly. Despite the several pleas by the Speaker of the National Assembly, they descended into that sacred place and space, and they continued the raucous, riotous, disorderly, and vulgar behavior and conduct, shouting at the top of their voices, marching, dancing, blowing whistles, and physically attempting to intimidate the Minister of Finance from speaking, intimidate him from speaking. They even were walking up to him and shouting into his face as he was attempting to make his presentation. When they did not succeed in those actions, they then rushed over, a few of them, rushed over to the mace, grabbed the mace, and ran out of the National Assembly with it, breaking it in the process and assaulting members of staff of the National Assembly in the process. They went outside of the National Assembly with the mace, dragging one particular employee of the National Assembly, whom they insulted and labeled a house slave because he was attempting to protect the mace from being broken and wrenched away by them. The mace in the process was broken. One of them then went into the control room of the National Assembly and pulled out wires from the loudspeaker system, preventing the loudspeaker and the microphone recording system from working for the rest of that evening. That was the behavior. Behavior that will never and must not be countenanced in any democratic institution, and certainly in any democratic society. And we in the Parliament, on the government side, had no choice whatsoever but to act in upholding the integrity of the National Assembly and to maintain the high post and position which the National Assembly holds in our constitutional democracy, because that behavior was intended to ridicule the National Assembly itself as an institution, as well as to ridicule the processes and abuse the processes of the National Assembly. And the National Assembly has a duty, like every other institution, to protect itself, its processes, and its officers from that type of vulgarity, that type of riotous and disorderly conduct, and that type of abuse. And the mechanism through which the National Assembly enforces its authority to maintain that degree of decorum and rectitude is the Privileges Committee. And that process was activated. And I read in the newspapers that it is being alleged that the members of Parliament did not get a fair opportunity to be heard. That is not so. They were written to, and they were given an opportunity to show cause in writing. And I believe they did. Of course, they professed their innocence. We have the proceedings, as you all know, were streamed live, and most of you, or many of you, may have seen it yourself. But we have a flash drive that has the proceedings unedited, and it is also stored on the Parliament's website for those who wish to go into the archives to view it either another time or for the first time. And you will see the type of conduct that was displayed on the 29th of December 2021. So the Privileges Committee, after deliberating on many, many occasions, concluded that it found the miscreants, the offensive parliamentarians guilty of breach of privileges and contempt of Parliament, and imposed a penalty of 4 months, 4 sittings suspension, and 8th sitting suspension, depending upon the gravity of the individual conduct. And that report is required to be adopted by the National Assembly, and that was done. And after that was done, well, the sanctions are then fortified and are imposed, and those who are imposed with that sentence, for want of a better word, must carry out that sentence. That is the law of the Parliament. So that was done, and they are now suspended from 4 sittings and 8 sittings. Now, suspension carries with it certain consequences. They are not to be paid. So how many months that 4 sitting lasts, they will not. Those 4 sittings last, they will not be paid. For how many months the 8 sittings last, they will not be paid. They will also not participate in any committee business. They will not participate in any business of the National Assembly during the period of that suspension. So all the trips that they wanted to go on overseas, and all the other benefits that would have accrued to them as parliamentarians are also forfeited during the period of the suspension. And that is what happens when you don't want to obey the law and you don't want to accept procedures. So our democracy is working and it is strong, and despite efforts made to denigrate it, to undermine it, and to subvert it in relation to this issue, it has prevailed. And I would venture to say that conduct of this type would not be countenanced in any parliament, at least not in the British Commonwealth, whose tradition we are a part of. So I am very pleased that this sanction was imposed, not because I want punitive measures to be imposed on any parliamentarians, on any parliamentarian, but because I want to preserve and protect the sanctity of the process of Parliament and the sanctity of Parliament as a democratic institution under our constitutional structure. It is important that we maintain dignity and we uphold respect for these institutions that are so critical to the democratic process of our country and to society itself. I will come back to the parliamentary sitting at a later stage because I want to deal with a particular issue that arose there. But I'll move on to other matters that I want to deal with. So the President is leading a very important delegation, engaging in very important bilateral engagements with the United States government and many important institutions within that government structure. And you are seeing a lot of the engagements being streamed live, so you have a sound appreciation of what is transpiring and the presentations that have thus far been made by the President and other members of his delegation. Yesterday, I met with a very high-level team representing the Federal Bureau of Investigations in the Caribbean. I met them at my office at 95 Carmichael Street, Georgetown. The delegation included the head of the FBI for the Caribbean region, and this is a person who has responsibilities spanning over 27 countries. I met his deputy, and I met also a representative of the U.S. State Department. I issued a press release in respect of that meeting, and in that press release highlighted the matters that were discussed. I used the occasion to reiterate a complaint that the government of Guyana has already made on more than one occasions to several important organs within the U.S. government structure, as well as to many law enforcement agencies within the U.S. security system. And that is the use of cyberspace and social media platforms by persons operating in the United States who on a daily basis or on a regular basis attempts to incite racial hostilities, racial and racist antagonism, excite persons to commit terroristic acts and acts of domestic terrorism, incite persons to burn Georgetown, encourage persons to take up arms against the law enforcement agencies of Guyana, and many more issues of that type. The names of those persons were provided and actions were requested and actions were promised. The law and the legal machinery may, in some people's view, work slowly. But I can assure you that it is working. The arms of the law are very long, and they reach across oceans and they reach across jurisdictions. Those who take pleasure in mocking the law, those who take pleasure in trampling upon the law, have learnt bitterly in the past, and those who are doing it now will also learn bitterly in the near future. I don't think I need to say more. I see certain personalities in the United States are jumping high and are jumping low and have issued all types of defamatory and slanderous statements against me. That is fine. There is nothing that they can say that the authorities have not heard. Nothing. At one time they were peddling that I am being investigated by the FBI. At one time they were peddling that I am wanted by the US law enforcement agencies, that I can't travel to the United States of America. And all manner of fabrications have been peddled about me and in relation to me. I am unperturbed by those publications and by those utterances. I am convinced that in the end, the law shall prevail. I am meeting with the law enforcement agencies. I am not hiding from them. I am working with them. We have a common cause and will continue to have a common cause. So that remains a work in progress, and one of the main items on the agenda was extradition. Extradition both from the US and to the US. And I will leave it there for the time being. I will go to the phone for your views because, as I said, I would like to engage you and I want to hear what you are thinking. So people are appealing that it is time that we take actions. People are calling people's names. I will not contaminate and degenerate this program by mentioning the names of the people I see whose names are mentioned here. But those people know who they are, and the persons who are watching know full well. So the Maheshwar Diocharan, Meena Tulsi, Gayatri Singh, Aditya Ramkrishnanan, Gargi Sitaram, Mohammed Rafiq from Canada, Rahaman. Yes, Exxon announced two more oil discoveries. Two more oil discoveries. And I must remind you that oil exploration is taking place, being done by Repsol, being done by CGX. CGX is scheduled to start production soon. Time is coming upon them. And every few months, Exxon is announcing more and more discoveries. And every time these discoveries come, you hear the bitterness from the opposition. You see the anger in the opposition because they know that these discoveries are going to generate more and more wealth for the Guyanese people. These discoveries are going to bring better quality of services to the Guyanese people. They know that these discoveries are going to bring more infrastructural development for the country and the provision of better quality of services across sectors. All of that they know aggregate to put them farther and farther away from government that they so desperately want. So whenever they see and hear about these discoveries, it is like a spear going into their hearts because they know that with each discovery, more wealth is going to be available for Guyanese, more development shall come, and whenever that happens, further and further away, they drift from ever holding the reins of government again. And that is why they are so opposed to national development taking place. That is why they are so opposed and bitter in respect of the mega projects that are unfolding in the country. If you listened to their debates in the National Assembly, they were bent on creating this very dismal picture of Guyana, that people are starving and people are hungry and children are not getting food. That is the narrative that they want to spew, and they spew all the time, because that is what they want to highlight. They don't want to highlight the positives. Now, I am not here pretending that cost of living is not rising. I spoke about it, and we gave reasons why. I am not here pretending that poor people do not exist in Guyana, or that people are not having a tough time in their daily lives. Of course, I'm alive to those things. I interact with the people of our country on a daily basis more than perhaps anyone on the opposition benches. So I know the realities and I know the struggles that the people are enduring. I also know in a real way what our government is doing to alleviate poverty and to alleviate this plight. And I know what the opposition did for 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, to exacerbate these sufferings that they are now highlighting as though they have now discovered them. So every day our government is working to ensure that our people get a better life, and every day we are working to build a better Guyana. So every time we turn a sod for a new phenomenal project, it angers the opposition. So 2 weeks from now, we will be turning a sod for a new maternity and childcare hospital at Ogle. That is a hospital that we are doing in collaboration with the Austrians. Modern, state-of-the-art hospital. Perhaps would be the most modern facility in the Caribbean. This turning event will be about 2 weeks from now. And that is in addition to the 6 new hospitals that we are partnering with the Chinese to build in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. 6 hospitals are going to be constructed in these regions. Region 2, Region 3, Region 4, Region 5, Region 6, and Region 10. State-of-the-art hospital. Total value of $180 million. These are major hospitals that will do surgery, specialized care, outpatient, inpatient, its own operation theater and everything. Modern. And that is happening across 6 regions. And that is in addition to our collaborative efforts with giants such as Mount Sinai and Northwell. Northwell is perhaps the leading healthcare provider in the state of New York. Long Island Jewish, for those of you who are listening to me, is, for example, a hospital of Northwell. And Mount Sinai, of course, is across the United States of America. And these are the institutions with which we are collaborating to bring modern and technologically advanced healthcare for the people of our country. Of course, you will never hear the opposition ever say that these are good projects. Now, nothing is wrong with being in opposition and giving the government credit or recognizing a project as a good one. But they have never done that. All they want to talk about is negativity, doomsday, poverty, starvation. That is their mantra. And that is what they were saying not now, it's nothing new. They were speaking about that when we were building the Berbice River Bridge. They got the cane cutters and the sugar workers to come out against us. Today, the Berbice Bridge is a legacy. They did the same thing when we were building the National Stadium. They said it is a white elephant. You could imagine what they did also. You can remember what they did when we were building the Marriott. They had physical protests outside these establishments and these projects. But they have no vision. They can't see the importance of these projects. So when we were discussing cost of living in the parliament, they were actually saying that people can't eat hotels, people can't eat roads. What they fail to understand is that these hotels will create wealth. They will create jobs. They create opportunities. They cause cash flow to come into the country. When they are being built, they bring liquidity. They cause monies to be spent in the economy. And who are going to benefit from this all, if not the poor people? How you want to move the people from poverty if you don't provide opportunities for job creation, if you don't create wealth? It is the creation of wealth that eradicates poverty. Talking about poverty doesn't wish it away. Talking about how people are starving will not feed those people. It is these investments that will create opportunities to feed those who are unfortunate and who are to get jobs, etc. That is how modern civilization is built. But that is lost upon this band of people. Completely lost. And that brings me to the issue that I want to spend a little time on, and it is the insurance motion that Mr. David Patterson brought to the National Assembly. But before I get there, let me look at some of the comments. So, let me see. Rajan, many civilized groups in Guyana are against the current government and dwell on the side of the opposition. So, AG, when CCJ will pronounce an election petition, I will answer that. Let me see. CCJ. They are invite some persons calling upon us to bring nurses from the Philippines. Well, there is going to be a time when we will have to import labor. The time perhaps is getting closer than we thought, but there is going to be a time when we have to import labor, all types of labor. But that will be a discussion for another time. We have to have a policy on how we do that. So a question is asked, when would the CCJ rule in the just completed elections petition upon which arguments were heard? The CCJ did not indicate when they will rule, but they did several times lamented the fact that these petitions take a long time to be heard. So I can't imagine that they would express such a view and they themselves would take an inordinate time to make their ruling pronouncements. So against that backdrop, I would venture to say that we should have a ruling relatively early and in relatively short time from the CCJ in respect of the elections petition, which they heard arguments on 2 weeks ago. But I want to get back to Patterson and his motions. Now, Mr. David Patterson is a person who has a proclivity to write and speak on matters of a technical nature, on technical disciplines in which he has no formal or other training. And if you examine what he writes on and what he speaks on, you will see consistently he writes and speaks on matters of a technical nature over which he has no known expertise. So he wrote a letter some weeks ago in the newspaper on the local content law, and he attempted to put forward legal arguments. Again, it's an area that he has no training in, the law. And I replied, and there was no rejoinder from him, and therefore I conclude rather, that he has accepted my pronouncements as declaratory of the legal position on those issues that he raised. But his letter was completely out of its depths. The speaker, when dealing with his motion, had to point out, well, Patterson, pointed out that some 4 or 5 motions of his were amended by the speaker, and he made that complaint. And the speaker pointed out to him that those motions had to have been amended to bring them in conformity with the standing orders. And that is a normal requirement. The motions cannot offend the standing orders. And the reason why Mr. Patterson finds himself in this position is because he writes and he speaks about matters that are outside of his competence. So the speaker has to amend them to bring them in conformity with the standing orders because he doesn't appreciate what he's writing. So the last motion of his suffered a same fate. But quite apart from that, even that which was unamended, even that which was left on the motion paper itself had some serious difficulties and serious inadequacies. Again, he was dealing with insurance, he was dealing with environmental principles, and he was dealing with law. Areas, again, that he has no known formal training on, or in which he has any form of known certification. So, he spoke, for example, about an oil spill that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. And he quotes the figure of that oil spill to cost 80 or 70 billion. It is not so. The figure in all the reports speak to 60 billion. I think he said 70 billion. I'm just giving you small issues. Now, 10 billion is a huge sum of money. This is United States dollars. So he was off even with his figures by some $10 billion. 10 billion US. A simple thing like that, he can't get right. His motion speaks, for example, to the amount of barrels of oil that we are producing. He says that we are producing somewhere within the vicinity of 120 barrels of oil per day. That again is not true. We are producing somewhere about 300 barrels of oil per day. So again, even that small issue, he can't get right. And when you go down the motion, as you get into more, if you can't get those simple issues right, most naturally, you could imagine what will happen in relation to the other issues, the issues that are complicated and technical. So he calls for unlimited insurance policy against oil spills. unlimited insurance policies. Now, any one of you who have a fleeting understanding of how the insurance industry works, or even if you have the barest of common sense, will know that the concept of unlimited insurance can only be a theoretical construct. It doesn't exist in the real world. Practicality and pragmatism do not support this concept of an unlimited insurance. The concept is repulsive to reality. No insurance policy, no insurance company would issue a policy that has no limit. What is the ceiling? How much are they going to pay? An insurance policy is grounded in contract, the law of contract. Contract by its very nature must be precise. It must have terms and conditions that are precise so that people can know what they are agreeing to. Who will agree to a contract that has limitless liability? Which insurance company will agree to a contract that has no ceiling on the limit? So that's the first point. Secondly, assuming that such a concept exists practically, do you have an idea of what the premiums are going to be in relation to that policy? Because the policy is limitless. So how much premium will you pay for that insurance company to find that transaction a profitable or a feasible one? When you insure, you're insuring an interest called an insurable interest. That insurable interest must have a value. Let me break it down for you. You go to the insurance company, you want to insure your car. You have to insure your car based upon the value of the car. You can't go to the insurance company and tell them you want an unlimited insurance policy for your car when your car is only valued $1 million. It doesn't make sense. But this guy puts it in a motion and then argues on it. So the entire concept of his motion, the entire basis of his motion was misconceived and flawed. And then, let me make this point. When they were in government, and he wants this government to introduce that on the licensees. Those are the operators who are operating in the sector. Now, obviously, our government values insurance, and as I will explain, there is insurance to cover risks. But let's go back to when they were in government, because these guys come to the parliament while we are in government and they bring all sorts of things. They move all types of motions to do things that they never did when they were in government, and they were only in government 2 years ago. So in 2019, first of all, what Mr. Patterson doesn't understand is that the contract, first of all, they signed a contract. I've described the contract as the most lopsided contract in the world. That contract has a clause in it that speaks to insurance and regulates the issue of insurance between the parties. And that, the four corners of that clause in that contract is what must govern the insurance in relation to that sector. At least the operators who have signed that contract. You can't come outside of the four corners of that clause. And they signed that contract in 2016. Of course, you know the controversy that surrounds that. We don't have to get there again. Go there again. So that's the first thing. He doesn't understand that it is their contract that creates the framework for the type of insurance that is possible in the sector. That's the first thing. Secondly, they issue Lisa 1 permit. And from 2017 to 2019, Lisa 1 permit did not have any insurance policy. They issue Lisa 1 permit and they did not put any insurance at all. But he comes to our government now and he wants limitless insurance. He wants unlimited insurance. That's the second point I want to make. So Lisa 1 that they issued had no insurance whatsoever. We amended Lisa 1 and we put insurance. We also put insurance on Lisa 2 and we put insurance also in Yellowtail. And what is that insurance? It is 600 million US dollar per event. So if you have an event today, 600 million insurance coverage you have. You have an event tomorrow, you have 600 million US coverage again on that. And then we are currently negotiating with the parent company for a $2 billion coverage, $2 billion US dollar coverage. So that is the framework that we currently have as per the license. Now, it may not be the perfect insurance scheme or policy, but it is far better than they had, which was zero. And when we were negotiating Yellowtail, and in our insurance policy, let me make this clear, there was an argument that was put forward to limit liability only to certain areas of damage. That was a proposal that was on the table. We rejected that. As Attorney General, I was invited to provide an opinion. We rejected that. Employing the causation principle in the law of negligence and the principle of polluter pays, the insurance policy will run wherever the damage flows. That is the principle. Wherever the damage flows. And the extent is 600 million. I didn't get to speak in the National Assembly, and that is why I'm using this opportunity to explain how wrong and misconceived that motion is. And you know, I saw it widely covered in the press, widely covered in certain sections of the media. So the misinformation and lack of information that came out of that motion was repeated and enlarged in the press. And that is the problem. And that is why every one of these motions and these statements that these fellows are making, you have to examine them, scrutinize them, and answer them. Because they have a habit. They have a tendency of making up a lie and repeating this lie ever so often, and that lie in their heads become the truth. And I've seen that said so many times and done so many times. So one of them, again, I can't remember which one of the members, spoke about persons who didn't receive some form of grants. And every time they speak, they make up this story that the government is skipping communities or skipping households, and it is a deliberate policy when it is distributing these grants. Now, I am not saying that our system is perfect, and any system would have deficiencies. But to tell me that we have a deliberate policy of skipping communities and skipping households is a proposition that I will never accept because it is an untruth. Now, let me say to you that do you think that they will have a person or households or communities that have been skipped in respect of some form of grant, cash grant or farmer's grant or whatever it is, and they will not put those people on TV and put them on their Facebook page and put them in the ring to have those people speak? How come these people are never showcased that they are purporting to represent? I have said to them repeatedly in the National Assembly, give us the names of these people. Give us their telephone numbers. Show them on your programs. Put them in the ring. Put them in the news. Put them on your Facebook Live. Let the world see who these people are, and let the people speak that they have not received this money that you are saying that they have not received. You realize that they are not doing that. They are not doing that, but when they are talking with themselves and by themselves, they relay these stories as part of their narrative. And they have a few people who would believe them. But I keep saying, and I will continue to say, why are you telling this story? You have a cell phone, whole day you're doing live with yourself, you're taking out selfie, you're doing in the ring, you're doing out of the ring, the breakfast show, and all kinds of show I see coming up on my Facebook page. Just flip on your camera and let the lady who didn't get the grant speak. Let us see who it is. Tell us her address. Tell us where she lives, so that we can go and we can rectify the problem. Or is it that you don't want these people to be known? You don't want them to get help. You just want to sing their sad songs. Is it that is what you're doing? So, every time that these people speak, you have to examine what they say microscopically, clinically, and critically. Because 99% of the times they are lying and they are spewing untruths and half-truths. So, I see comments are flowing. Thank you very much. Pam Singh, Famida Singh, Sally Jones, Soma Bipath, and so many of you, Nikhil Sankar. So we have had a good program, Rabindra Prasad, and my operator is signaling to me that we have come to program time now. I want to thank you very much. This hour is eclipsing so quickly that we may have to consider extending this time. But for the time being, we will stick to the hour. And this is where I have to say goodbye, and I will see you next week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and join me next Tuesday for a continuation of our discussions. Good evening, and thank you very much.